Right. Welcome, everyone. On behalf of the Center for Career Readiness and Life Skills and the Yukon Foundation, I welcome you to our panel event today. My name is Steve Kligerman. I'm Assistant Director at the Center for Career Readiness and Life Skills. And I'm very excited to have all of you join here today. We're going to be hearing from two Yukon alumni panelists about their career journey, how their experiences and lessons they have learned have helped them within their career, and then also how it may help you as current students within your career process and in getting started out. During this program, our panelists will answer a variety of questions that we have prepared. And if you have any questions throughout the panel, please put those in the chat and we'll have some time at the end for our panelists to answer those as well. So I'm going to introduce each one of our panelists, and if you could each just tell us a little bit about where you currently are and what you do within your role, and then we'll get into the questions. So Julian, if you could start.
Yeah, sure. Hey, my name is Julian Dinowitz. I'm a motion designer at WWE. I do live TV broadcasts, graphics there. I do a lot of logos and style frames for new looks, new packages. I do a lot of arena graphics. I really wear many hats in that role, even do some coding. But yeah, I'm a motion designer at WWE.
Thank you. And Dylan.
Hi, I'm Dylan Ferris. I'm currently a real-time graphics developer at ESPN. I previously worked at Madison Square Garden as a motion designer, and I kind of do a lot of what Julian does. I'm doing a lot of the same things, except I do AR or VR graphics for broadcasts. So coding, 3D animation, motion design, all that stuff.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here today. I would love to first hear how you got to the current position that you are in. So what are those current steps that you took in order to be at where you are now? And Dylan, why don't you go ahead and start us with this one?
Sure, yeah. Honestly, I didn't know where I was going to be. And this sort of came about as a result of just exploring a lot of things. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about like, I knew I wanted to do some sort of animation and some sort of design work, but I wasn't specific to the sports world. And I got into this industry by working very hard every day and trying to teach myself a lot of new things and, get my foot in the door. That was the thing I always told myself. Like, if I could land one job, that's the first step, whether it be sports, whatever industry you're trying to get into, that was my goal. So that's how I got here. And specifically, I mean, I was, I was a, I was crazy. I went through all these job boards, applying every day and just working hard.
Cool. I'll follow up. So I don't know. I always kind of had an idea of where I wanted to be. I didn't necessarily realize that there is a difference between like the motion sports world and the film, the motion sports world and the film motion world. But I kind of knew I wanted to be at WWE in advance. Me and my friends really liked wrestling, and so what they were doing is they were actually in college. They had like sort of a backyard wrestling promotion. That was a very like DIY silly thing. But even though it was very like, from the roots and like, low production budget, not super, not a lot of bells and whistles, I still saw it as an opportunity to kind of like, use it to elevate my graphics and potentially get my foot in the door with people there. So that's exactly what I did is I, said, hey, can I do graphics for you guys? And I gave it that, A+ polish kind of, even though it was not necessarily that kind of promotion, not that kind of project. And through that, I started putting on my website. I started talking to people at UConn. So, in addition to kind of putting myself in the field, I took advantage of my network and my resources because I knew that, there had to be a professor there being at Stanford that potentially knew and had a tie to WWE. And while that necessarily didn't like get me a job outright, I was able to speak to one or two people at WWE who at the time gave me some advice. And then I think it was like 6 months later, I wrapped up an internship, and within a month, I actually happened to be working there. So it was a little bit of luck, but it was also a little bit of kind of like carving my own path. Really, you know, kind of steering into WWE and wrestling because that's where I wanted to be. And so it worked out. But also, you know, purposefully kind of tailoring my resume toward the specific role I wanted was the big step I took in order to landing the job.
Excellent. So you both already mentioned kind of putting together some things for your portfolio. Julian, you just mentioned that experience. Dylan, it sounded like as you were putting things together for your internship and as you were applying jobs. So can you talk about the steps that you took to prepare your portfolio and how big of an impact do you think that that made within getting your roles?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, honestly, through teaching myself and through studying at UConn, I took every project, and yeah, even if it was small, even if it was not necessarily outright a portfolio piece, I had the intention and the thought behind it. That was my goal. I wanted to not just learn things and just go with the motions. It's more so like I'm going to learn these things, apply them, and then know them so that I can not only prove through a portfolio that I am capable, but I'm putting quality work again and again and again, and I'm building upon my skills. And you know, for the sports background specifically, I mean, I just I don't know. I mean, it was starting off small, starting off with stadium graphics and stuff, like player prompts and things like that you see at any game, like, oh, get loud, make noise, all that, stuff. And that led to doing bigger projects and bigger projects, excuse me. And that's just been my process, start small, keep building, building, building until you have now you could categorize your portfolios. Now you have a very wide skill set that can take you to, somewhere you may not think you're gonna go. And yeah, that's what it was for me.
Yeah. Aside from what I already kind of mentioned about being in my portfolio, another big constituent to my portfolio and one that's really relevant to, pretty much anyone watching right now is the agency courses at UConn were incredible foundational work for my portfolio. It was an opportunity to actually work with real like outside organizations and businesses to develop an actual product that would be used in order to elevate their brand, whatever they're trying to do and whatever their current goals are or current challenges there are. And so having those pieces in my portfolio and being able to say, like, I did A, B, C, D, getting to choose how much or how little I wanted to work on within those courses in order to, really tailor it toward, like, again, where I want it to be and what I want to do ultimately. That was really important. That's honestly like probably the biggest constituent to my portfolio, aside from going out on my own and doing my own motion design, wrestling work, was like, using the time at UConn to make something really exceptional and then put that in my portfolio.
Great, thank you. All right, so you're in, I would say, some pretty impressive positions right now at WWE and ESPN, well-known companies. Can you tell us each about the biggest challenges that you have faced so far in terms of if it was a, specific project or kind of in general what that transition looked like? But what would you say has been your biggest challenge to this point?
Sure, yeah, I could start. Yeah, so I came from a motion design background, and in a traditional sense, it was just mostly animation. And coming into ESPN, for my position, it's not just animation. You're involving a lot of scripting and a lot of these new and upcoming technologies that you're not really exposed to. I mean, I'm trying to think of a specific example. Yeah, I mean, I got one. I got hired in April of this past year, and that was around when the NBA finals were on, and I was tasked with taking the trophy and creating this whole big crazy simulation and making it run in real time for TV. And as a newcomer to that, that was a huge task. I mean, I really was, to be fair, very overwhelmed. And I think what's really important when it comes to learning new things, approaching new challenges is remembering where you came from and also just keeping an open mind, because everybody starts somewhere and you're gonna keep getting better and better. And you're there for a reason, right? You're doing what you're doing to get to a certain point. So that's what I kept with me, and I think that's a huge lesson to be had when it comes to getting to these bigger jobs and progressing.
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest challenges in my role is, well, there's been a few challenges, and it's whether or not like they're temporary or long term. I'd say like one of the most like long term challenges that you'll see in a lot of motion design roles, so not just specific to WWE, is you're going to be expected to wear many hats. You're going to be expected to do a lot of different things, but it's nothing to really be scared of too, because so many of these companies and everything have very specific needs that it's stuff that you learn on the job. But it's, you have to keep up with it, and you have to make sure that you also like it, that you care about it, because you're not going to know everything you're going to do going into a specific role in school. And so making sure that you're fully acclimated to the role at all times, especially when you have aggressive deadlines, which is, again, a lot of the motion design world. That's like an ongoing challenge. I don't know, a challenge just specific to my role maybe would be I'm in live TV, so not all motion designs in live TV. We have a lot on like the East Coast, but and specifically in Stanford actually. But as far as live TV goes, there's always like quick turnaround. It's people coming running in. They're gonna go, I need this in 5 minutes, or they're gonna say, I need this in 30 seconds. It needs to be on screen in 30 seconds, and it's how do you not like get stressed out and instead kind of get that fire under your butt and really thrive with it, and actually how do you learn to love it too. So that's a challenge. Also just a personal challenge again within any role is learning to set yourself apart, because when you're at a big corporation like WWE, as opposed to maybe a small studio or a freelance job, you need to make sure that you set yourself apart, or at least I think it's in everyone's best interest to make sure they're always contributing a little extra. And so, yeah, I'd say those are roles that are either or challenges either specific to my job at WWE or just motion design in general.
Excellent. So you both mentioned already kind of learning new skills a little bit. Dylan, you mentioned new technologies. Julian, you mentioned kind of staying up to date and being able to adapt to those as well. So outside of the technical animation skills, what are some of the skills that have stood out to you as really essential for you to be successful within your careers this far?
It's a great question. I would say, honestly, just being a people person. You can't be, how do I put it? You can't be someone that's, to yourself or not really open to criticism or to, um, like you're going to meet a lot of people in the industry. You're going to meet a lot of different viewpoints and, experiences and so on and so forth. And I think it's really important that going into it, no matter what industry, if you're in sports, you're in something else, yeah, you gotta just make yourself not just likable, but like you're there to learn. You're like a sponge. You gotta be there every day, ready to learn. That's just it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. It's like you got to be a people person. I can be very introverted and very extroverted. Depends on the day, depends on the thing. But when you're at work, you always get to pick like what days am I going to work on a project alone, or what days am I going to work with a big team, a small team? Am I going to hop in a project halfway? Am I going to pick up where someone else left off? You need to be like flexible, and so being like a people person is what's going to allow you to, I think, excel the most. There's going to be a lot of times where there's 5 or 6 people weighing in on your graphic from all different points of the hierarchy. And you need to respect, what they're all saying, because it's going to consistently make your work better, especially when you're first starting out. A lot of people go in, they've only ever kind of sought feedback from themselves and maybe a professor. not even their friends or family. You know, a lot of people are just very like isolated artists. So to be able to learn or you know, properly take advice from other people, I think is really important. And then the other thing that ties into being a people person, this isn't something I have to do a ton in my role, but for a lot of people that wind up going into like studios, doing, you know, the whole agency setting, you need to know how to pitch your projects to clients. You need to know how to talk, and it's not a scary thing. It's honestly a really fun thing. It's you're just talking about your work, and people like, you know, that artist that's laid back and is just sort of able to kind of let it, you know, spill out. So not, you know, over calculating what you're going to say, but at the same time, you need to be able to do it. You need to look like you're having fun doing it, because a lot of people get in that presentation, they look miserable to be there, and you need to be excited about your work. So it's just very, I think that's honestly also like one of the biggest pieces of advice is it's just something outside of motion design entirely, is like be likable and then want to like people, that sort of thing.
That's great advice. All right, so thinking back to your experience as a student, what experience at UConn do you believe was most helpful in preparing you for your future?
Hmm. Uh, I don't know if I could pinpoint it to one experience per se, but maybe the overall just experience day in and day out. You know, you're going there to get a variety of classes, and I think that's the strength of what UConn has with their digital media program. Whether you're a film student, whether you're motion, animation, so on and so forth, you get the best of both worlds. You get exposure in all of it, and after working in this industry, it's super helpful to have just a little bit of each and have the ability to specialize. So, yeah.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. So what experience at UConn do you believe was most helpful in preparing you for your future career?
Agency by far, because agency is where I got to talk, or not talk, listen to people kind of talk about like what the, you know, world was like, and that's how I knew kind of where I wanted to go. Someone from WWE did speak during the agency course, which is kind of where I had an idea. I was like, man, like live TV sounds like challenging, but like really fun, like every day, like something new. And then in addition to that, the projects I worked on at UConn, um, someone from UConn entered them, someone from the DMD program entered them into a couple awards things, you know, so your professors look out for you. They look out for the work you do. If you do good work, they're going to enter them and they might win. And so I won a couple of awards. Those went on my resume. So it really helped elevate my resume, I think, you know, above like, you know, what other students were maybe kind of coasting a bit more, not necessarily UConn students, but just anyone who I was competing with while applying for jobs as a fresh graduate. I think it gave me a leg up. So I think the most important experience was probably agency, just across the board. I think that's a class where if you're being, I think everyone has to take it. If you could take it twice, I did it twice, do it twice. That's my advice.
So you've each mentioned so far a little bit about what that initial transition was like from student to in that full-time role, but I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into that and hear kind of what that experience was like. Like, was there a time where you had doubts in terms of your abilities, or did you have a moment of I can do this, like I'm ready to handle all of these. So kind of both sides of that. Was there a time of doubt? What was that like for you? And then was there a time where you had that confidence of I can handle this?
Yeah, I mean, like all the time. Yeah, I mean, it happens to this day still. You know, you're still in that position, but you still feel like, wow, am I really supposed to be here? Yes, you are. Yeah, fresh out of school. I mean, for me, I was working full time, well, like part time at MSG, and then I was a residence advisor here at UConn. So I was balancing my time pretty hard. But going into the industry, trying to get that full time position, I mean, yeah, there are definitely moments of doubt, and it's just a matter of when is that opportunity gonna come, not just come to you, but when are you gonna take it? Like, you just keep working at it and something will come up. And it's really important to keep your head as level as you can. I know it can be really difficult considering like you're sort of alone in it. You're like, oh, I have to get a job and I don't know if I'm good enough. But I'm fairly confident. I'm very confident in, UConn's ability to prepare you for the professional world. You have to not just coast through UConn. You shouldn't coast. You should be, taking these lessons in classes as the, I guess the right steps to eventually land that job. I don't know if I explained that right, but that's my thought process when it comes to that.
I still have moments of doubt like every day. In fact, I go between both like every day because, like I'll make something again, like in my role, it's quick turnover. So I do a lot of art in a day and it's always like, this is due in like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And so if I make 3 pieces in a day, I'll be like, wow, like this sucks. Why do I, like, why do they trust me with art? And then that'll be the one of the producers like, amazing, get it out the door. I love it. And the one where I'm like, this is my masterpiece. That's the one that comes back with 10 notes. You know what I mean? So it's nothing you should take too seriously. Just seek other opinions. Those moments of doubt really come the most when I'm working on more custom stuff and more long-term stuff, because that's the stuff that's going to get the most changes. But I think that's also the stuff that grows you the most. The stuff that I'm like, I got this, is when they're like, we need something in 5 minutes, is because it's like, all right, as long as I have the information there and I have, something kind of basic there, I know no matter what, it's going to run on TV. So it's kind of funny how the stuff that I initially was worried about going into the company, which was the quick turnover stuff, that became the most comforting to me. And then the stuff that I was, the least stressed about, which would be kind of the custom, more long-term stuff where you can really take your time and sink your teeth in, that became sort of the most, like, oh man, am I good enough to be here? But yeah, like Dylan said, you are, and you're going to have those moments every day as an artist. And you can't just take them too seriously. It just means put the pen down or put the mouse down and come back to it in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Go grab a cup of coffee, that kind of thing.
Julian, you mentioned that feedback of, maybe as a student, you were kind of self-reliant on that criticism, or maybe from a professor, and now, going into those real world positions, you're getting feedback from many people. So for both of you, how did you handle that change? How have you learned to take that criticism and grow from it? What has that process been like in terms of having multiple people have a say within your work now, and kind of how you take that to be better and but also have confidence within the work that you're doing?
You wanna take it? Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta think.
I don't know. It wasn't too hard of a transition for me, just because college should train you to be ready to take criticism. But when I was first at UConn and I was doing agency work and I was getting feedback from actual, people at, certain companies, organizations that we are working with, sometimes they would be hands off and they'd be like, I'm not a designer, whatever you guys I love. And, it's an easy client. That's great. That's not every time you're in the real world. And so being able to take feedback was something I learned while at UConn, when, this thing, my baby, that like I had come up with, like, the idea for the pitch and everything, and it got picked. And so I was really married to it, was sort of getting changed by the client. But what you have to remember is that it's the client's product, and no matter what, you can always go home and make your own piece, but you're getting paid to make a certain thing. And so you have to take that work or you have to take those notes professionally. And no matter what, you'll see it takes making one or two pieces, but you're going to see like the client's notes or your boss's notes or your team members' notes, who may just be equals. They may just be people weighing in. That's going to make your work better. So I think the biggest thing is, whether you want to do it or don't, just take the advice, take the input that someone's giving you. If you really need to make a second version, put your first version aside so you don't lose it, and put the notes on the second. But you're going to see after like a few projects, the people weighing in are pretty much always right about my work, and they're always making it better, like almost consistently, like 99, 100% of the time. So I think that's the biggest thing, is take it even when you're reluctant. Put version one aside if you really love it that much and want to save it, but wind up comparing the two after, and you'll see. I think it just takes experience and doing it a few times to really realize, okay, my idea is not going to be the final vision for this.
Sorry, did you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, so what the kind of process was like in terms of now having to receive feedback or criticism, maybe in a way that was more than when you were a student in college, and how kind of that affected your process, your ability to learn from it. What was that like for you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it yeah, that was a huge transition. I'm not saying that to be like scary, but definitely going from student work to professional work, it's a huge jump. I mean, starting at MSG, that was nice, just because I was able to have like three different teams give me feedback. And at first, feedback can be really daunting because you feel like your work is amazing and it's amazing off the first iteration. But feedback is that's, I mean, that's just what it is. It's feedback. You're there to improve upon it. You're making something for a client, and you know, it's just going back to what kind of person you are. If you're able to take that in stride, improve it, learn something from it, and get something out of it for yourself, that's the kind of attitude that you got to have towards it.
So I have a couple questions left for our panelists, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So if you can start putting your questions in the chat, and we'll start to take those in a few moments here. But my next question is, thinking back to when you were a student, what do you wish you knew in terms of career preparation or what you're about to face? What do you wish you knew as a student, knowing what you know now?
See this one if you want. I just wish I knew where the industry was heading, which it's a technical industry, and it's one that's continuously advancing. So there's no way to really predict, but there actually are, every day people saying years in advance kind of where the industry's heading, like what program is going to be used in 5 years. You know what I mean? People are making those predictions now. One of the big ones that I think we all had a heads up on, but didn't really realize how strong would become is AI, and we're not really sure how that's going to take over the industry yet, if it will at all. What the legal factors will be surrounding that. But I wish I knew about it, because it would kind of better have equipped me for like what I wanted to do in the future, and what I want to do overall. Not saying that I want to be doing something different whatsoever. Motion design is probably like one of the most fulfilling careers you could have. I mean, I make art for a living, but just making sure I'm using. I find ways now to use AI to help elevate my work rather than having it replace me. Things like that. I mean, it's just these sort of things that like you want to be you want to have a leg up on. So that's the only thing, is I just kind of wish I knew where the career was heading, because those sorts of challenges I now am thinking more strongly about. I'm considering learning other programs, not just learning but mastering other programs in addition to After Effects, which is the big program I'm in now, because people are saying, hey, Unreal Engine might take over, or Houdini might take, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just kind of knowing, hey, is this an industry I really got to keep my finger on the pulse of? And it is, but it's exciting too, but you got to make sure you're ready for that, because it requires a lot of mental energy. And after a long workday, you don't always want to go and, crack open After Effects again. So it's just something to keep in mind. It depends on the person, but yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna build off what Julian said. One thing I wish I knew was definitely how fluid the industry is, and how, say for instance, we just talked about doing motion design, right? You wear a lot of hats. You might be, at least in my case, I was exposed to a bunch of programs. Like right now I use Blender, After Effects, Photoshop, the whole Adobe Creative Suite, Unreal Engine, VizRT. I don't know if anybody knows that. That's broadcast. I've used Chiron. There's also Ross Expression. There's a lot of stuff out there. And you know, you can never prepare for everything, but you can certainly prepare to I don't know how to put it, like put yourself in the right position to continuously learn and grow as an artist, because you never know what you might end up using. You might end up using After Effects, but then you get a job as a 3D artist doing something else. And you need all these skills to succeed. And I guess that's my long way of saying one thing I wish I knew was, or I guess prepared for, was how fluid everything is. Yeah.
Yeah. If I could add on to that, it used to be, or at least this is what I've been told. I don't know, but it used to be, you go to college, you learn Illustrator or Photoshop, and that's your job. People used to just have Photoshop as a job. Now Photoshop is one of the 10 programs you have to know. But again, that's not something to be afraid of. The programs are becoming more user friendly. A lot of the features make them a lot more fun to learn. And so, if anything, I would just kind of see what jobs you really like, or what jobs you imagine yourself out at, are out there, and just kind of look at what they require and start from there, because there's a boatload of programs. But don't be overwhelmed. It's a really cool thing. It just gives you a lot of options, if anything.
So you mentioned there kind of learning the new technologies, taking that on, in addition to being in positions that probably take up quite a bit of your time and in doing the real-time animations and graphics. How have you found an ability to have work-life balance? What has that been like for you? Has it been a challenge? Have you had to force yourself to try? Is it something you're still working on? What has that been like within your first role in terms of that work-life balance?
Great question. Still working on it. Yeah, no, it's definitely an adjustment. I think any first job, you definitely have an adjustment because you got a variety of whether it be life, work factors that affect your daily life. And my biggest piece of advice would be control the things that you can control and don't try to control the things you can't. Like if you have a crazy work schedule, you got to build around it. And you got to do as much research as you can before getting into it, definitely. For a role, because you might not expect things, you might find things you might like. And it's super important to keep your work-life balance because, the work only takes up so much time of your day and you got to do stuff for yourself too.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about this field is I imagine everyone that's going into a motion design role really cares about art, is a really creative person. So chances are you're going to be fulfilled creatively by your job, and it's not going to feel like work most of the day. Which if you really like what you're doing, that's going to be the case. So I think that's the most important part of assessing like what a work-life balance is for a motion designer. We're all creative people, and we're going to wake up in the morning with like really creative ideas or like a lot of creative drive. And so wherever you go, just make sure you get that out of your job, and you're not going to have worked a day in your life. You know what I mean? That's what I say. It's like when I go to work every day, I'm just having fun. It's like going to Disneyland legitimately, except I get paid to go. So
So you've already both given a lot of good advice from what I'm hearing, but anything that you haven't touched on in terms of what advice would you have for current student, recent graduate looking to do something similar to you now?
Yeah, definitely. So if you're trying to do specifically sports, media, any kind of thing like that, there's a lot of job boards out there. My main piece of advice would be to update your LinkedIn, keep that portfolio updated. Like try to, if you're kind of like fresh out or you're still studying, keep updating it. Keep trying to find creative new projects. Think outside the box. And yeah, for the sports stuff, I mean, the Northeast has a lot of options, whether it be wrestling, baseball, basketball. One little hack I would say is like look at the specific arenas and try to see if they have internship programs. There's a bunch out there, especially in the New York area. Um, yeah, other than that, just keep applying. Yeah, apply to as many as you can and apply creatively. Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing I did for myself in like, my senior year at UConn was I just started taking like all my homework assignments so seriously, because I guess what I didn't realize in earlier years was, like all this work I'm making as homework, it isn't homework. It's like the foundational pieces to my portfolio. And so if I take it really seriously, which I'm paying to do it, we should all be taking that seriously when we're in that situation. you're going to get a lot out of it, because there are a lot of people that are just going to kind of do the work and do it as quickly as possible and go on their way. And if you, really try and stick out in your class, you're going to stick out to professors. Professors are people who work in the industry. You're going to stick out to your classmates. Classmates are going to remember your name. They're going to add you on LinkedIn. And so you're going to start to kind of build a network and a reputation for yourself really early on, in addition to building a portfolio really early on. So it's going to do you a lot of favors to just kind of take your senior year seriously. A lot of people like to get this senioritis and chill and kick back. That's when you go full send. That's when you work harder than you've ever worked. And I think that's when you're going to get like kind of the most out of your time. That's what's going to allow you to also make a complete portfolio and really have a step above, everyone else. And again, it's what's going to allow you to build a network, which I think is like the most important part about being in motion design. The world of animation is really big. There's a lot of companies with a lot of jobs. There's a lot of studios, a lot of freelance work, but you'll realize that you run into the same people over and over again. So it's also really small. So, keep in touch with your peers, post on LinkedIn. It's really more general advice. Like it applies to kind of any job, aside from, the taking your homework really seriously. And agency stuff, it's all normal. Just be a good person, post on LinkedIn, keep in touch with everyone, because that's your network and that's how you're going to continue to get work going forward. That's what I'd say. But take agency and take it seriously.
One thing I'm going to add to that, kind of an odd thing I did was keep a spreadsheet. Because the industry is so small, I literally went arena by arena, sport team by sport team, used LinkedIn as a tool to find creative directors, reached out. And I'm not just here like asking for a job. Probably shouldn't do that. But, I didn't exactly have a network at first. So I tried to build that. And when you start from the ground up, it's literally just cold call emails, like, hi, I'm a designer, so-and-so from blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to get my start, and just building connections. Everyone's pretty social at the end of the day. So, as long as you're nice and, you're doing the right things, it could be a valuable tool. But yeah, honestly, keeping track and trying to like hack the system in a way, use the tools at your disposal. So
Excellent. I promise nobody paid them to say work hard in your senior year, take it seriously. But I feel like that's something that we hear just constantly from students, is how important that work that you're doing within your senior year, the things that you're doing to build up that portfolio, how much of a difference that can actually make. And when it's, part of your coursework, if you're taking advantage of that, you're going to be kind of ahead of everyone else that then after graduation or right before graduation comes up realizes, okay, I really need to build up my portfolio. I really wish I had taken that more seriously, or go back and basically do the same assignments, but now with more of a focus, because you want it to represent the best professional that you can. And I'm glad that you both mentioned networking right there at the end. This will be my last question before we take any from the audience, but you both spoke to it a little bit there. But how big of a piece have you seen network being within your roles, either for your position to get where you are or the people around you? What has that looked like?
So the guy who spoke when I first was in that agency class and was learning what it was like to work at WWE, I now work, opposite him. I work, well, not opposite him, but in the same room as him, So having a network, you're going to be, the people that you're in class with now are your future coworkers. So, be nice to people, share your work and make sure people see your work. And make sure you really contribute to what you now have as like a little community. There's always there's a rule. It's like 6 degrees of separation. I'm not sure if you guys have heard it, but it's like you can get a piece of information to anyone else in the world by only having that information change hands 6 times, through 6 unique people. So it just says I can get a letter to the president having it only change hands 6 times. So if that's something that's true, and it's been proven that it's true, Imagine how much smaller it is for your industry. I mean, we're talking about, you're one person away from the CEO of your favorite company potentially. So make sure that, you're constantly like remembering who you're connecting with, write down their email, send them a message. I'll put my email in the chat after this concludes, and you guys can reach out to me and I'll be part of your network, at that point. Just make sure you're constantly connecting, because that's how your career is going to grow.
Yeah. I would sit kind of opposite to one of UConn's professors now. I didn't take a class with him, but it's kind of goes to show that, like, oh wow, this industry actually is really small, and you will be, you could be working with people that and in terms of networking being important, I mean, it's huge. It's everything if you're starting out like I did with no network. And another thing I forgot to say was there's, for sports specifically, there's sports conferences, there's career fairs specifically for sports. I believe the website is Teamwork Online. Yeah, I'll leave my email too for you guys if you need it. But yeah, utilizing again these resources were super helpful for me to break into the industry and make great connections that I could use in the future and all that. So don't take it for granted.
Thank you so much. We will leave the chat open just for another couple of seconds in case anybody has questions. Not seeing anyone so far. Oh, here we go. We got a couple rolling in here. All right. So thank you so much for this generous advice. Two questions for you. So first is about file management. Has working in your industry given you any tips on how you store, manage, and sort your files, especially considering sports media is often collaborative and high definition? Let's start with that one.
Yes. A lot. I mean, if you're working at like ESPN, WWE, I mean, at least for me, we have properties across the world, and there's so many sports that we cover. And you may not work on all those sports, but when you look at the overall library, what's super important is keeping it consistent, keeping it clean, and cleaning up your stuff, because it can really add up, and it's kind of an untold skill that you definitely should have and isn't really taught. You kind of have to teach yourself that, but yeah, super important. Definitely get good at that.
Yeah, so the first thing about file management, yeah, I mean, I've learned stuff about file management from work. Every company or every person is going to do it differently, some better than others. But if you wanted like specific advice about, file management, I'd just make sure, you don't call like your final version of something like, final piece, final, parentheses, final for real, like I used to write like final two, and just make sure just version one, version V1, V2, you don't have to go crazy. Sometimes you need to go crazy when you're working with large teams. And so, that stuff kind of gets built out by whatever the project or the first person to kind of, create file names for everything. That's how that sort of sorts itself out. You'll do it ahead of time, but if you're just looking for personal advice, as like a freelancer, just V1, V2, everything, version everything. And then as far as, software and hardware, yeah, I mean, when I went to work my first day, there was a desk and everything, there was a computer already there. But like for your own freelance work, you can figure out how you want to charge for that stuff. I personally haven't done a ton of freelance work, but some people do say, hey, I need Redshift for this project. I'm going to bill you for a month of Redshift. Or they'll say, hey, I need a better GPU just to do this project. How can I potentially get my client to work with me on that? And so that's something that you figure out more as you go along. You talk to other freelance artists and see how they do things, or see how the client wants to do things. But if you're working at a corporate job, generally they're going to have like all your infrastructure there, all your hardware.
Yeah, agreed. I did a little bit of freelance, so I could kind of speak on that. It definitely depends on the project and who your clients are, but most of the time you're coming into it with your own software, your own equipment. If you're you could be an individual freelancer working with, your client and another agency or something, and then you're handing off things and so on and so forth. And it's just a matter of being communicative, and clear. And it's just something that you pick up, and honestly just yeah, just talking to your client. But trying to see if I answered the whole question. Yeah, I mean, with the corporate side of it, the company provides most of it. And on my side with the experimental stuff, like we have like everything provided, VR headsets, AR equipment, tracking, hubs, so on and so forth. And yeah, you just work with it.
All right, next question is there anything you did in your earlier college years that affected your later years or going to work full time?
Practice, definitely practice. I mean, establishing consistency and like not like the sort of consistency that like a work ethic, like a drive. In the beginning I wasn't the most consistent and I didn't really have the passion there, but over time as I kept doing projects and kept doing things, you build that up. And when it comes like applying that to college, like your projects, like that, those are potential portfolio pieces. So taking it seriously, doing the best job that you can, and improving every project is a great piece of advice I could give.
Yeah, I mean, as far as early college goes, it's hard to say because a lot of those foundational courses you're learning about the history of motion design as opposed to being as hands-on with the programs. But even today, you'll see, when I was first applying the jobs, they still asked, make sure you know the 12 principles of animation. I didn't think anyone was going to quiz me in an interview or anything, but you still need to make sure you have that stuff pretty solidified. In fact, you want that foundational information like fused to your frontal lobe. So going over the basic stuff over and over again, just do it, just get it out of the way, and then you can do the fun part where you make shapes move. But making sure you have that foundational information actually there and actually memorized, I think, is important. And I didn't do that in the early stages of my college career. And so I had to do it in my senior. So you know what I mean? That's how I'd say actually I had the more of the lesson learned experience is that I wasn't doing my work as much. I was more coasting. And look, you're paying for this time. You're paying to be here. So just, you know what I mean? Just use it. And people are going to see you using it and they're going to take note and they're going to help elevate you from a very early stage. So yeah, I'd say just take your work seriously. That's it. Have fun, but take it seriously too.
There we go. Julian learned the hard way, so you don't have to. So now start early with those. Next question. Julian mentioned wearing multiple hats in the office and having a very versatile skill set. As an aspiring motion designer, is having a jack of all trades mentality over an ace of one more beneficial entering the industry?
So it depends. I started out doing motion design, and that's the kind of question that you run into all the time, where it's like, is it better to be specialized? Is it better to be someone who has a bunch of skills? And I don't know if I could really say anything on it. I mean, I think for me, it was good to have a bunch of skills, but there is benefits to being specialized. If you're a motion designer that only does 3D and you're really good at it, people will notice. If you're really good at 2D, people will notice. If you can do both really well, people will also notice. Definitely look at, if you want to do sports motion design, if you want to do some sort of other motion design, look at great examples of work and use that kind of as like a base. And those people are successful for a reason. So yeah.
So first, so Johan asked this question. I mean, tell me if this isn't you, but we just had an intern at WWE in the graphics department sit next to me named Johan Velez. So if this is Johan, hey, you should have spoke a little bit about what it's like to be an artist at WWE. If this is not the same Johan Velez, is very awkward. But as far as answering the question goes, I think like my answer is actually really simple. Wear as many hats as possible, be a jack of all trades. I think the industry used to be, and that's just my advice. If someone disagrees, talk to people, see what many artists have to say. Everyone has their own experience. Some people have a mastery of one thing. They're savant at like illustrating, and their whole life they're an illustrator, and they're just, a pen and paper or one program. And if that works for them, that's fine. But what I've found success doing, and also a lot of fulfillment doing, is learning as many programs as possible, because a lot of, okay, it is Johan, hey Johan, so yeah, you're going to see a lot of these job listings are going to have like, they want to see 8 programs. They don't expect someone who's a master in all of them, but the thing is, so many different programs do so many different things, and by having a really basic, and I mean like 5 hours worth of foundation in each of those programs, you're going to go into a role where you're going to learn the rest of the way. You're going to learn the meat of it and the important stuff, and you're going to be fulfilled by that, tenfold, because you get a certain, sort of like reward out of learning something that day and then seeing it air that night. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'd say being a jack of all trades is what's worked the most for me, and it's also what's going to make you the most versatile artist. There's even things I've learned in one program that apply to another. Any artist that knows After Effects that's just getting into Cinema 4D, which is, I believe, the way the program is sort of has that pipeline at UConn. At least it did when I was there. You're going to see there's a lot of stuff, it's similar between the two, and the programs actually also communicate. You can have them communicate a lot of the time. So I think just wearing as many hats as possible, honestly. Like if you're like, I want to know how to do that, look up a tutorial. Chances are you're going to find a tutorial on how to do something in Houdini, which you've never opened, but hey, by the way, it's free. And by following that tutorial, you're gonna feel like you've learned a new program in under like 2 hours. So I'd say just wear as many hats. It's gonna make you highly versatile and highly desirable. Have a mastery in something. Have something that you can own. And like I said, something that's like fused to the frontal lobe. But keep learning. Like, don't just stay married to one program, I think.
All right, we'll probably have time for one more question after this one. So if anybody has one last question, feel free to put that in there. But next question is, how does a degree play into design hiring at corporations? Is a hiring preference given to a BA versus a BFA degree holders? Are you both motion design BFA majors?
Yeah, so it definitely does play a role. I would say for internships, not so much, obviously, because you're just trying to get like experience basically. But for full time, I mean, I'm not sure if it's industry standard, but at least having a degree in some sort of design is good. But more so, what's more important in my experience, not speaking for everybody, but having a great portfolio speaks for itself. And they'll obviously see if you could do the work well, and that's what's the most important. I'm a Bachelor of Arts, I believe, as a generalist. I transferred in. I didn't do a motion design full track just because I wanted to graduate quicker. So, yep.
I think it plays a role. I think it's less about, the degree itself, and more about, what you're getting out of your time at UConn, to be honest, because what people are going to look at the most is your portfolio, but your portfolio is a representation of the degree you just earned. So it's not really about having, like no one's going to ask for you to turn on your webcam for you to show them your degree. They're going to ask for you to see your portfolio, but your portfolio, again, is a representation of all that time you spent. So I don't know. I mean, we're in the art world. I'm going to be honest and say not every artist has a degree, but it's hard to break out into, like, there's the term starving artist that applies to every form of art. It's entertainment. And so you really have to work hard to get to that point where people are going to pay you to just have fun and make art and make shapes move and yada, yada, yada. And so I think one way to make sure that you're fully capable, and also that you're really getting kind of a complete network early on, is to go for a degree. I personally think I got so much out of my degree that, it wasn't as much as a hiring preference as it was something that gave me like an insane leg up on the competition. So maybe other, jobs just kind of care that you have went and gotten a degree. I can't speak for every job out there, as I've only had one. But yeah, also, I don't know what happened, but Dylan, you became the host. I think we lost our host.
I'm the host
So
now.
I don't know what happens now, but
Yeah, if we have any more questions, we'll
yeah, we'll take more
take
questions.
them. Yeah.
For the host now.
I'll just chime in and say thank you so much for your generous presentation and your advice. It's been really forthcoming, and it's so exciting to hear your perspectives.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to help. Definitely, like when I was at UConn, I really wish that I had more presentations like this that I could watch and really like absorb, because it's super helpful to hear from people who were there and like get what got them there.
Yeah. If you guys ever want to reach out, take down our email.
Or LinkedIn, yeah.
What's that?
Or LinkedIn too, yeah. I mean, sometimes I post sports jobs that I find, so if anybody wants that, it's literally just my name.
Yeah. You guys are getting the experience I had now when I was a student and I saw a motion designer from WWE speak, and then I wound up working next to them. And, that started from an email, me reaching out like, hey, tell me more what it's like. So reach out. You know what I mean? I'm not promising you a job, not at all. I'm just saying I can offer you, more advice, and I would love to be a part of your network. Yeah. If it's any, like Johan in the chat, literally worked with. So yeah, it's totally doable. Make me part of your network. Feel free to reach out.
As for your email addresses, are you putting those in the chat? Or maybe we
Yeah.
could have a follow-up, or at least let me write them down before we
I'll
end.
repost mine. It's a little, I think, further up.
Yeah, I think they're up far. I can paste it again.
If you don't mind,
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
because that is just so generous of you.
Sorry, autocorrect. There we go.
Great. Oh, you're back. Welcome back.
Sorry, my computer just died.
Okay.
Thought it was plenty charged. Let's see, were there any other questions within the chat? It doesn't look like it. All right, so sorry about that. But we will end it there. Julian and Dylan, thank you so much for your perspective, your insight, your advice for today. Great to hear about your successes, overcoming some of the challenges, and also just your general words for our current students. So as they mentioned, feel free to reach out to either one of them. But thank you so much for your time today.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks for having us.
Thank you.